and welcome to this week's episode of Better Than Sex. My name is Julia Reed Nichols.
And I am Kitty Cat DeMille, and we have a special guest for today. Ashley, would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. My name is Ashley Manta. I am an award-winning sex educator and coach and the creator of Cannasexual.
Awesome. I have been so excited about this. I met Ashley at MJ BizCon like 3 or 4, I think 3 years ago. And we met so briefly and we exchanged business cards. And then you were so delightful. You ended up donating a Cannasexual gift certificate when the Green Light District went on tour, which was like 2 years ago. So this is like the first time we're having a real honest to God conversation in person on the internet.
I'm so excited.
I know, right? So tell us a little bit about Cannasexual. Well, let's start. How'd you get into what you're doing now?
So I've been a sex educator for 13 years now. And from the beginning of my sex educator, baby years of doing like sexual violence prevention education and rape crisis counseling, I ended up bridging into focusing more on like the pleasurable aspects of sex education. That started around like 2013 or so. Mm-hmm. And when I moved to California in late 2013, that was the first time I had access to medical cannabis. And that was such a game changer, being able to...
Where in Cali are you?
I'm in Southern California, in Long Beach.
Okay.
And it's lovely here. I knew that I'm from the East Coast originally. I grew up in Pennsylvania, and I promised myself that once I was old enough, I would never live through another winter in the Northeast.
Where in Pennsylvania are you from? I'm from a Jersey girl.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, I'm Jersey Shore. So
North Jersey or South Jersey?
Long Beach Island, so South Jersey.
Amazing.
We say water with a D.
Yes, you do.
That's our distinguishing characteristic.
As does most of Philadelphia. So I grew up in Harrisburg, and then I went to college and grad school in Philly, but we went on vacation every summer in Longport, right down from Atlantic City. So
nice.
Yeah. Love the Jersey Shore in the summer. Winter, however, not my friend. And so moving to Southern California was like definitely the right choice for me. And people out here are so much more progressive and open-minded, and cannabis is just everywhere. And so I am a sexual violence survivor, and I had pain with penetration for a long time. And it wasn't until I found this company called Foria that makes a THC infused lube, and then they've since expanded their product line to include CBD products as well. Mm-hmm. But their THC oil was the first product that ever allowed me to have penetrative sex without pain. And that was like a light bulb moment in my brain, because I didn't know any other sexuality professionals who were talking about sex and cannabis. Right. And so I decided that could be my thing. And now here we are, 5.5, 6 years later, and like, what are the leading experts in the world on sex and cannabis? It's so mind-blowing.
You are the person that they cart out most of the time when they need to comment on the two. It's absolutely true, because I always see you and I'm like, oh, there's Ashley's name again. Like, she's got it like the market cornered.
There are certainly more people now, and I actually co-founded a Cannabis and Sex Professional Alliance with a Harvard MD and 2 other sex educators, and that's been really cool to have other like colleagues to really help like suss out, because there's a lot of bad information on the internet. So I'm glad I'm not the only one like fighting the good fight anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a dialogue that like, so I do a lot of energy work, kind of like, on the woo-woo, sparkle dust side of the spectrum, which is where cannabis is in real life anyway. And then like, especially when you get into sex and cannabis, like, it's so interesting, because to me, it's about allowing yourself to be the person you really want to be. And then in the sexuality, which is, Julia and I have talked about sex magic, like how many times on this podcast?
I believe in sex magic.
I love it. I identify as a sex witch. So
there you go.
So tell us some of your tidbits of information, your things that you really help coach people have a better sex life.
So what is really great about cannabis is that it's so versatile. And I like to explain it to people as it helps you take care of whatever's getting in the way of pleasure, connection, and intimacy. And things like that could be pain or shame or feeling disconnected from your body, or all those voices in your head from society and the media telling you that you're not enough or you're too much. And it can really kind of help you get back to center and balance, and to see your body in a much more loving way, and to also really wake up your senses and start to enhance those amazing sensations on your skin and on your genitals, and bring in online new erogenous zones. And the best part is you don't even have to be high. Like, that's one of the big misconceptions that I see out there, is that you have to get stoned to use cannabis. And that's totally not the case. There are a lot of ways that you can use cannabis that don't require you to be high at all. And topicals like Foria is one of my favorite ways of using it, because it's going straight on your genitals where it's going to do the most good.
Right.
And, and it makes it feel amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the world of sexuality is really just permission slips, right? It's whether or not you're giving yourself the permission slip to do the thing that you want to do, and that you're open to the experience that your partner might want to do. So like, cannabis is just another one of those ways when people are inhibited, and nobody wants to be inhibited. Like, we all want to be the clearest version of who we are, especially in the bedroom, because nobody wants to be the shy girl in the bedroom. Like, that gets boring so quickly.
Well, some people are shy, and that's okay too. But like, being your truest self and at least having a choice of how you want to show up, I think can be really useful.
Yeah. So what's like a fun story that you have in your wheelhouse of this element of sexy world that you've joined?
Oh, let's see. How about the first time I ever squirted from having anal?
Okay. Let's go deep on this. I've got my wine.
Yeah, right? I'm like,
I'm ready.
We're good.
So back in December, my boyfriend and I went away to this really amazing place in Southern California called Borrego Springs. And it's called a certified dark sky community, which means that the light pollution is so minimal that you can actually see the Milky Way with your naked eye.
Oh.
It is freaking gorgeous. And so we went out there to have a weekend of romance and journeying. There may or may not have also been mushrooms involved, but I can neither confirm nor deny. But cannabis was definitely the star of the show.
Right.
And so once, I had consumed a little bit, and I like to hit cannabis from a lot of different levels. So I used Foria on the front, and then I also used one of their suppositories anally, which has 60 milligrams of CBD and 10 milligrams of THC. And so good. It just helps to relax everything without numbing. Because as you both know, I'm certain numbing the ass is a terrible idea, because you can't feel pain.
Yeah.
That's a problem, because pain is your body telling you that something's wrong. And so we did all the right things. We put the suppository in, let that sit for a little bit. I was feeling good. I had a little bit of a joint that I really liked, and that I already knew impacted me in ways that I enjoyed. And I put in a butt plug, let that kind of hang out for a little bit, put in a bigger butt plug.
Straight butt plug? Are you a vibrator butt plug person, or are you just a straight?
I'm a straight butt plug person.
Okay.
A vibration doesn't do a whole lot for me anally, I found. Okay. So yeah, just a plain old butt plug with a base, of course. As we know, anal safety 101, everything has to have a base that goes in your ass.
I mean, personally, I think anything that goes in an orifice, it's always good to have an escape method, because there's nothing scarier than having something stuck in an area that it's not supposed to be stuck.
Absolutely. And I mean, the good news about the vagina is a cul-de-sac, right? So there's only so far it can go. But the ass, the sphincter is a highway. Like, things can just get lost, okay?
Oh my God, this is such a fun interview. I love it.
So knowing that, I'm thinking, okay, I want to make sure everything has a base. It's all made of body safe, non-porous materials, so it can be sterilized.
Yeah.
All that good stuff. Lots of lube, so much lube, lots of breathing. And I also am into energy. So I do Reiki on myself, on my partners during sex, all that good stuff.
Are you normally an anal person, or was this?
I am not.
Okay. So this was like special occasion anal.
This was totally special occasion anal. And my boyfriend's penis is massive. It's really, and like, it's a pretty average, like a slightly above average length, but it is girthy. Yeah. Really girthy. And so like, he is the kind of person with a penis who probably doesn't get anal a whole lot because of the relative girth of this member of his.
Yeah. You have to know what you're doing for it to be an enjoyable
really, really
And
do.
It probably has to be a girl that's like, oh, I've done this a million times. I can
Yes.
conquer you. Whereas
Totally.
like if it's like a girl he was dating that's not you, which was like, I've never done anal before, she'd be like, no.
Right. Yeah, you really have to. This is a go slowly and comes with a warning label kind of penis for anal.
I love it.
So one of the things that we found is that sometimes the amount of having to go really slow when inserting anal, sometimes the penis would soften, which is super normal. Like if you're not actively stimulating it, sometimes it does get a little bit soft. So there are these things called O-nuts. Have you guys heard about this?
No, tell me about it.
Oh my God. Okay. It's like a bumper for the penis. So it keeps it from going in past a certain depth.
Wait, so you put it in yourself to block the
No, you put it at the base of the penis. It's like a cock ring, but it only goes around the shaft and it creates like a barrier so that it can only penetrate so far. So for vaginal sex, if you've ever had a partner who is like longer than you are deep and they smack you in the back of the cervix, and that feels really unpleasant for a lot of people. Yes. So that's what they were created for. But we were like, you know what? This actually kind of doubles as a cock ring. So we put an O-nut on the base of his cock under the condom. And it turned his penis into like the Hulk. So this thing is like extra big, extra veiny, extra all the things. And I'm just looking at it like, okay, all right, this is going to happen. I want this to happen. Like this is something I'm here for. I wanted it so badly. Like this was not him pushing. This was like me being like, I'm gonna take this cock. God damn it. And so after the second butt plug, I was like, okay, it's time. So he laid on his back so that I could get on top of him and then kind of lower myself down at my own speed, which was really good for my comfort. Started going, like taking deep breaths. And I was amazed at how comfortable it was. Like there was still some like, okay, gotta go slow, do some breathing, do some more relaxing. But like once we were in, it was like, okay, all right, this is okay. And then I started kind of grinding back and forth a little bit. And then it started to feel really good. And better it felt.
Hitting that spot from the back side. Like
the better it felt, the more I was kind of grinding into it. And all of a sudden, sploosh. And I look at him and he looks at me and I'm like, I'm pretty sure I didn't just pee on you. I think that I may have just squirted. And that's not typical for me.
You're not a
squirt. If I squirt at all, it's like little kind of dribbles, you know, like a little stream. It has never been like a gush.
Yeah.
And I was just like, wow, that just happened. Thankfully, we had laid down a waterproof blanket, our little Liberator throw.
Wait,
so we were like
prepared. Were you in a tent?
Fuck no.
Okay, you were like
kidding me? We were in a $400 a night resort.
I thought you might be like glamping because of the lack of the light.
I'm a Taurus, so I don't camp.
Yeah.
Camping for me is a motel. Like,
yeah.
This had a fireplace in the room, which is definitely my speed.
Yeah. This had concierge service. Thank you very much. Like,
right. So squirted, and I'm like, okay, that happened. Keep going. Maybe 2 minutes later, gush. And I'm like, whoa, what just happened? Did I just squirt twice? I ended up squirting 4 times over the like 20 some odd minutes that we were having anal. Totally blew my mind. And I largely credit, you know, all of my skills and all the training I've had, but like those suppositories made it so much more comfortable that I felt more enjoyment out of what I was doing. And so I kind of got to experimenting more. And by the end, I was like trying to get a dildo up the front for a DP experience. I got ambitious.
So I have a couple questions.
Ask away.
One, how long had you guys been together when you guys did that?
Well, our 5-year anniversary is on Thursday, and that was in December, so about 4.5 years.
So you have a very strong emotional bond to get to that point where you can allow it's not like it's like a 3-month relationship or something.
Nope. We've been together a while.
And have you done it since?
We have. We have had anal maybe 2 or 3 times since. I think maybe just 2. It's funny. He enjoys the sensation, but he also recognized that like doing anal is a lot of emotional labor.
Yeah.
Because it's so vulnerable. And so you end up sometimes having like either top drop or sub drop afterwards, because we also have a dominant submissive relationship. And so like sometimes he's like, you know, it would be fun, but I just don't have the bandwidth to hold all the space for that.
Is he the top or are you the top?
He's the top.
He's the top. He's the top. So then like what happens is because I've never heard the word top drop. So it's like you're so emotionally vulnerable that you guys switch places?
It's more that like when you're the top, you are keeping a lot of plates in the air, right? You're making sure that your sub or your receiver is okay and that they're comfortable and that they have water, and there's also some kind of like emotional hangover that can happen the next day, like because anal is full on root chakra, right? Like you are getting into the deepest, most security, like laden parts of your energetic body. And so you can feel a little bit raw in the days that follow and need a little bit of extra attention or maybe some more care or snuggles or reassurance or what have you.
Right.
So much like if you're doing any other scene. And so sometimes he's like, that's a lot. I just don't feel like it. Right now. And so anal ends up still kind of being a special occasion thing because of the enormity of it.
Yeah. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It makes it special. You know what I mean?
It absolutely does.
Right. It's go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask if people are curious on trying these products you're talking about, where can they get them?
Oh, great question. So Foria has a website, foriawellness.com. Yep. I actually even have a coupon code for them. If you use coupon code Cannasexual, you'll save 10%. You can't get their THC products online. You have to actually be in California or Colorado and go to a dispensary, but all of their CBD products are available, and their 100 milligram CBD suppositories work just as well.
Is there a big difference between the THC products and the CBD products?
There is a substantial difference, but the effects are comparable, if that makes sense. So THC is more sensation-based. It's got the vasodilation properties, so you're bringing more blood flow to the area, which heightens sensation. CBD is really good for inflammation and discomfort, although THC is too in different ways. So CBD, think like anti-inflammatory, anti-anxiety, some pain management. THC is really good for pain management and heightening sensation. So they're complementary, but different.
I find that a lot of times with CBD, my personality, like pretty much 100% stays intact, where with THC, I have a tendency to be like a little bit more fluid in my personality, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, CBD doesn't have an intoxicating effect, so it doesn't impact really how you show up, other than you might be less anxious and more calm. But THC, when it's decarboxylated or when it's an active version of THC, the Delta-9 THC, that can have euphoric effects. Or if you go too far, you can feel paranoid or nervous or just like off in some ways. So you have to be really mindful of how much THC you're confusing. And I tend to say less is more.
Now, as you've like segued into being like the weed sex girl, are you still doing the other sex stuff, or is that kind of like decreased? You know, no. Is there an area where they don't mesh, I guess is the question.
There are areas where maybe cannabis isn't the thing that's necessary at the time. Like I'm definitely still doing regular sex education as well. In fact, most of my private clients, I work with clients in a coaching capacity via Zoom. So I'll see like couples and individuals. Most of them tend to be asking questions around communication or what's called desire discrepancy, when one partner is more interested in sex than the other. And so that ends up being where I'm mostly focusing my professional work on a one-on-one basis. And then for classes, like I have an online dirty talk class coming out in the next couple of weeks. And that's not going to have any cannabis related content at all.
It's just how to talk dirty.
How to talk dirty. Because I used to be a phone sex operator. I know it's hard for people, so I want to make it easier.
How was that? What was that like?
I learned a lot.
Yes.
The money was terrible, but I learned a lot.
Yeah.
Isn't it crazy how the money can be bad for those sort of things? You like get involved thinking like, I'm going to make all this money. And it's like, by the time it filters down to the actual talent, it's not that much money.
It's not that much money. And it also like, it made me acutely aware of how frequently people try to exploit sex workers. Like we would have to take the credit cards of, it was all masculine seeming presenting people who called, so I'm going to call them guys. And so, oh God, I can't even tell you how many times they would try to get off before I would finish processing their credit card.
Oh my God, those are like the cheapest dudes ever.
Seriously, it was so upsetting. Like, pay your fucking sex workers, pay for your porn, pay your sex workers. Like, don't be cheap assholes.
But you had to process the credit card?
Yeah, I worked for a company that was very much like you had to do all the work yourself. Like they found you through their site, but you had to put up your own ads. You had to process your own credit cards. You had to do all the things. And for that, you only got to keep 50% of whatever you made.
You do all the work and we'll keep half the money.
Right?
Yeah.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. I do a psychic site that I've done for years, like, I don't know, like 6 or 7 years now, Julia. And like, but we never, they're just like, they call me and they're like, this is your client. And I'm like, okay. I feel like that credit card thing would be like such a bitch.
It was also kind of a buzzkill because
it's like,
hey baby, what are you wearing? Also, can I have your credit card? It was really nice. Luckily, you only had to do it once. If they were a repeat caller, which is of course what you were always going for, like they would just call, their number would come up, their information would be stored, and you could be like, oh, you want me to bill you? Cool, done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you had any other sexy jobs other than sex therapist and phone sex operator?
So I am a coach, not a therapist. I always want to draw that distinction real clearly because therapists are licensed and I am not.
There you go.
But I've also shot porn a couple times, although you'll never find it.
Shot porn, like you were the star, or were you actually the photographer in it?
I mean, star is a strong word, but I was performing in it.
No. I always
You're
say
a star to me.
I always say this is that like there are certain things that once you've done it, you're classified. For some reason, like in Reiki, you're like a Reiki master. You are a master of the universe. And if you have been in porn, you are a porn star. Like, take it. Own that power.
Yeah, I've dabbled. We'll say that. I also used to work at Pleasure Chest as their web manager. So I managed all of their online inventory.
City, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I remember. Is it still there, right? Or is it not?
Pleasure Chest?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's still there.
Yeah, they're still there. They actually donated to Pinups on Tour last fall. So they donated a big box of sex toys that Vixen DeMille, who's going to be on in a few weeks, went and picked up for us. So
they are such a great company.
Yeah, we with one of our shows, we give away sex toys as our raffle. Mm-hmm. We always say that nobody wants to buy a sex toy, but everybody wants to win a sex toy because it's like plausible deniability. You know, like I was helping the charity.
That's adorable. See, I'm on the other end of the spectrum. I'm like, everybody needs to buy a sex toy, and whatever is holding you back from walking proudly into a sex shop and being like, I want that big dildo, we got to work on that.
I agree. I
agree too. I think I think so much of your sexuality is a lot based on where you grew up and who your parents were.
For sure.
Because like they condition you. Like, I mean, I didn't go to a sex shop until I was out of college, just because like my parents didn't really talk about sexuality, and I went to a Catholic college where like people were very straight-laced, you know?
I hear that. I also went to 2 years of a Catholic college, and we had a no penetration rule on campus.
And do you know how many girls did anal? Did you?
So many. Duh. Anal doesn't count as virginity.
You are not losing your virginity if you are doing anal. And I'm like, what the fuck? That makes no sense whatsoever.
It makes no. Well, and of course, virginity is a social construct. It doesn't exist anyway. It's all just bullshit that they feed us to try to control our bodies and link our inherent value as humans to some completely asinine anatomical feature.
Yes.
Hashtag end rant.
I mean, like, you know, I'm of the opinion we're all in a simulation anyway. So we're all just having conversations with ourselves.
Right.
You know, because like, so what you bring in is something that you should explore, is what I always say. Like, if it keeps coming in, you should explore it, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's good to do.
Yeah.
What's the biggest part of your business? Is it the coaching? Is it the live events? Like, and where do you see yourself kind of going? I mean, once we all get to go back to the world after COVID, where do you kind of see yourself going?
Great question. I would say the biggest part of my business right now is my coaching. I have a couple of private clients and I'm expensive. So that's very much my bread and butter.
You're worth it.
I am worth it. That's actually, I just said that at an event in Malibu on Tuesday. I was like, I'm expensive, but I'm worth it. Just like a Louis Vuitton bag, you know? If you want to coach with me, I'm definitely high fashion. But I hope to, as COVID, I don't know, changes, evolves, that we start to have more testing and things start to open back up. I actually don't think we're there yet. I think the people that are starting to open up already may be doing it prematurely. Like, my next event is scheduled in late October.
Yeah.
Because that feels like far enough out but even that is very tentative and may get pushed to early 2021. But I want to do more events at resorts. So the thing that I'm doing at the end of October is actually a couples retreat in Jamaica at a cannabis-friendly resort. It's over Halloween weekend because I'm a witch, and it's a full moon that weekend. So we're going to do bonfires on the beach and full moon Halloween rituals and a masquerade ball. And it's only limited to 10 couples. And there's going to be, of course, social distancing and masks and all the things.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Like, as we evolve, we had talked to a producer a couple weeks ago who does vampire balls, and she had an event right at the beginning of when all this started, before things started shutting down, before we were all really aware. 30 people at her event got COVID.
Wow.
Including her partner
and herself.
Yes, but her partner was a smoker, and he was in the hospital for what, like 2 to 3 weeks, Julia, she said?
Yeah. So it's kind of like that's what we're all talking about. It like sounds abstract, but then like, how guilty do you feel if you threw, like, I know for us, if we throw like a burlesque show, like, well, that's great, people had fun, but if anyone dies because of that, it's not worth it, you know?
No, not at all. And especially because even the mild cases seem to have really scary long-term effects. So, you know, my life now looks completely different. I only see my boyfriend. He only sees me and his wife. We have, you know, I'm doing some social distancing, like with friends, but it's 6 feet with masks. Like, I'm not going out and seeing my other lovers. He's not seeing his other lovers. Like, no more play parties.
Oh, you look so sad.
He's sadder than I am. He's got more of the variety need than I do. I have a really quality dick, so I'm pretty satisfied.
And how did you guys meet in a more open community, or did you figure out you were more open as you went into the course of the relationship?
We met at a play party.
Okay.
And he was married when I met him. And literally his intro was, "Hi, I'm B. I'm Polly. I'm married. My wife knows I'm here." Like, that was, and then we both had the STI awareness conversation. I was like, "I have herpes." He's like, "Me too." We're like, high five. So then that was just, it was a match made in heaven.
Yeah.
It's a pretty high, I mean, that's something I'll just bring up. Like, it's a pretty high percentage of people, especially in Los Angeles.
Yeah, it's a quarter.
Have herpes, right?
Oh, it's a pretty high population of the world. Like, almost 90% of the population has either HSV 1 or 2. So that's like everybody.
Yeah. It's one of those things nobody ever talks about, but is definitely like just a reality of dating. Yeah.
I find that like the moment you start talking about it, everybody has a story. You know, it's like I had a partner in my past who had herpes, and we were just very careful. And you know, I do not, but like, you know, I seem to be the person that my friends I get sent to now, like where they're like, "Oh, I met this guy, but he has it. Like, let's talk about it." I'm like, okay, and it's just everybody knows a story, or everybody has it in one degree or another. It's just nobody talks about it.
Absolutely. And the thing I hear most common is like, my grandmother had cold sores. My mom had cold sores. They kissed me on the mouth once and I got it. And now I've had it. And what's interesting about our sort of society and the fear and shame around herpes is that oral herpes is like, oh yeah, everybody has that. No big deal. But genital, it's like, oh God, no, not genital. When people don't realize that the cases of genital HSV1 are on the rise because people are going down on their partners with a cold sore and then they get genital herpes.
Right.
I had a doctor once. I went in, I had a partner cheat on me, and I went in and I was like, just do the gamut. We weren't using protection. I didn't know he was sleeping with other people. So let's just run all the tests. And I remember when I was like sitting there, she's like, you'd be surprised how many people cry more when I tell them they have herpes than when I tell them they have AIDS. She's like, the reaction is worse from people because I think they feel like it's more like visible. Like there's like a visible element to herpes, you know?
I feel like there's also a shame. There's such shame to herpes for some reason. I don't understand why. Just because like it's like if you have AIDS, people almost pity you because they're like, oh, well, maybe you're gonna die and that's okay. Whereas like with herpes, it's like, oh, you're a pariah now. But that's not the truth because like such a large portion of the population has herpes. So it's not really a pariah situation. It's just we've made it out to be in the narrative we're in.
We have. And, there's so much like lack of awareness around most STIs, especially longer STIs like HIV and herpes. Like it's just when you have sex, STIs can happen. That's why we get tested. That's why we use condoms. PrEP, having pre-exposure prophylaxis that you could take every day that makes you 99.9% not to acquire HIV, that changed the game. And then the drugs that they have now for people who are living with HIV, who are now able to get their viral loads to the point that they're undetectable and thus cannot transmit the virus. If you have a viral load that's undetectable, you're untransmittable. And so like that finally is slowly starting to work its way into like, okay, we don't have to freak out about this thing anymore. We should still be aware. We should still be having conversations. We should still be testing and using condoms. But like, we don't need to have this like panic reaction. And I'm hoping that eventually herpes will have a similar, that people are like, oh, this is a thing that most people have. It's not a big deal. It's no different than getting a couple pimples here and there. It's not like a life sentence, or it's not a death sentence. You're not going to die from having herpes. That's not how it works.
Send you to the leper colony.
No, that doesn't happen. Yeah. So I'm hoping that people will start to get more educated around STIs and stop making like shitty jokes and like comments and saying things like, I'm clean, you should be too. Like, did you just do the dishes or what? Because like that doesn't actually mean anything useful, but it's such stigmatizing language that people use, and it absolutely drives me bonkers. Like when I see that in dating apps, I'm just like immediate left swipe. Like, I'm clean, you should be too. Fuck you. You have no idea. I bet you don't even know the last time you got tested. Like, psh.
Well, that's very true, and especially a lot of males can live in this fantasy that they don't have any. As females, we tend to get tested once a year, so you find out. But guys can live in this bubble where they're like, "Yeah, I'm clean. There's nothing on me," and you're like, "That's not." Did you miss that class? Did you? I remember as a kid, I mean, you guys are similar age to me. I grew up in a time period where I felt like if you didn't use a condom, you automatically got AIDS because of the way the ads were when we were kids.
Yeah.
They made you feel like it was gonna happen. And so I don't understand the younger generation that's more lax about it. Because I'm like, didn't you see the ads on MTV? Like, didn't you see those?
Julia, I think some of it was like when we grew up, like we really took it to heart because like we also coming from like a musical theater background, I feel like because AIDS was so bad in the 80s for the artists.
I think she froze. Oh, there she is.
No, I'm here.
Okay, there you go.
But like I always say, I'm like, in the 80s, like there were these fun sex comedies, like in the late 70s, 80s, which I love. Like I just rewatched Secret of My Success, which I love. It's a Michael J. Fox movie from like 84. And like there's everybody sleeping with everybody. They're having a blast. And then like AIDS happened and everybody just got so scared to have sex, you know, from that like period of like, I don't know, like 85 to like 92, 93.
Oh, into the mid 90s. Like the interesting thing about cannabis and HIV is that the reason that cannabis became medicinal and legal for medicinal purposes in California was because of the HIV and AIDS crisis. Because before it was legal, there were networks of underground folks like Brownie Mary and Dennis Perone who were helping get cannabis to patients. And they were the ones who wrote the laws saying we need to be able to provide this medicine because it is medicine, like for people who have cancer, people who have chronic pain, to stimulates their appetite, that allows them to be able to sleep, that helps with the pain. And so the queer community is very much responsible for cannabis being medicinally available in California, and then it's sort of spread across the country, which is awesome. So there's a lot of crossover in those two realms that most people don't realize.
Yeah, and I find I was a caregiver for my stepmom for the last couple of months of her life last year, and you know we were doing edibles with her, and like one of the things that I found just is you end up getting cancer because your body's rejecting yourself in some way, whatever it is. So it's like that's what the cells are doing. So like the cannabis is almost like a pause to just allow yourself to see the version of yourself you would like to go back to being, if that makes sense.
I don't know if an oncologist would necessarily agree with that assessment, but it's an interesting theory.
Yeah, I mean this more on like a psychological energy level. Like I'm not a medical professional in any way, and I'm not saying that certain things are going to help you or not. But it's like the person you want to be when you want to be open in sexuality is the person you want to be open with whenever you're going through some crisis, even if that is like something like cancer or another disease like that. I think that would be the best way for me to say that in the safest way possible.
Yeah, don't go. Really we didn't go to medical school.
Yeah, I am most definitely not a medical doctor. Do not listen to anything I say other than for my opinion.
Awesome. Disclaimers noted.
Absolutely.
Can I ask, Ashley, so you're a sex coach. Mm-hmm. What exactly in your background led you to coaching? And is there education that you had, or how did you find the knowledge base that you're able to help your clients with? Great question.
So a lot of people come to coaching from different ways. There are coaching certification programs. There are even sex coaching certification programs. Mine came as sort of a cobbling together of a lot of different areas of my life and previous jobs. So I was certified as a rape crisis counselor and domestic violence crisis counselor with 40 hours of training each. So I learned how to listen to people. I learned how to show up for people and to help de-escalate them. I also have a master's degree in philosophy. So I learned how to think about problems from an outside the box perspective and reframe things and come up with creative solutions to issues. I also worked as a victim advocate in the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office, where I handled 20 cases a day of juvenile victims of adult offenders. So I learned how to navigate the court process. I also worked at Planned Parenthood for a year. So I learned all about sexual and reproductive health. Then I worked as a phone sex operator for a year. Then I worked at Pleasure Chest for a year, selling toys and lubes. And all of that experience sort of combined, paired with the fact that people were always hitting me up for advice, whether it was after my workshops or when they would see classes I was doing online. What about this? What about this? Can you help me with this? And then being non-monogamous for the last 7 years, I'm like, oh, this is a thing I could do and like just help people through problems. And one of the limitations of teaching is that you have to be rather general in your teaching things. You know, you can't get too specific because you don't want somebody to feel left out or be like, oh, well, that doesn't apply to me. So you end up kind of speaking in broad terms. Whereas when I'm dealing with someone one-on-one, I can really like get deep into whatever's going on with them and give them completely personalized solutions to their problems. And that's what coaches do. Coaches are solution oriented. Therapists are very like feelings process, historically oriented. Like, how did you get here? And how do you feel about the things that are going on in your life and behavior changes? But like from a kind of abstract perspective, whereas coaches are like, here's your problem. Here's a solution. Here's what I want you to do. Here's homework to help you like build these new skills. And so it's a much more hands-on directive approach.
Now, how do I say this? Okay. So because you're coaching and do you actually look at the anatomy? Like, do you work within like the boundaries of being like, well, let me see what the anatomy looks like to be like, this would work better or not? Or is it still very much emotional talking? You know, do you get more into the physicality of it where you're like positioning models like to shoot a movie? Does that make sense?
Well, so all of my coaching clients are done remotely. So I don't do a lot of hands-on work. I have in the past for VIP clients. Like if they are really dead set, like I need you to be there helping me through this. Like, all right, cool. I'll throw my gloves on. And like I stay fully clothed because like they're not paying me to take part in what's going on. But like if you really need somebody to kind of help position things, I can do that. It's expensive as fuck for me to do that, but I will. For the most part, people are just asking questions. So they might have specific, like when I move my leg up like this, it feels weird, or I notice that like it hurts if I lay on my back. So like we get into specifics, but it's not a visual thing. It's a descriptive thing.
Right. Yeah. Because I mean, I think sometimes like when you go to a dance class and it's like a couples dance class, it's very nice to have an instructor there. And if you have the funds to pay for someone to be like, there's got to be a reason you're not doing this as anatomy. Let's figure it out. Mm-hmm. Like it would be a very nice bonus for the people with the expendable incomes to do that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And, you know, once COVID is in a different place, I may open that up again. But for the foreseeable future, you're only going to get me through a camera. So, so I have to get creative with my advice.
Yeah.
And if our audience wants to find you online, where can they do that?
Well, you can find me on my website, cannasexual.com. I'm also on Instagram at Cannasexual. And I have a podcast of my own called Elevated Intimacy. And you can find that on any of the podcast hosting sites. We just recorded, I want to say, our 15th or 16th episode. So there's a nice little backlog for you to go back and listen to. And that's the best way to get free content. Like, you know, I get that I'm not affordable for most people, and that's okay. But I try to put out a lot of free content so that you still have access to the work that I'm doing, even if you can't afford to hire me as a coach for $250 an hour. I also have online courses coming out, like my Dirty Talk class. So if you wanted to go to lovedirtytalk.com, you can download a free 9-page like getting started guide to Dirty Talk, and then you'll be the first to know when the course goes on sale, and it's only going to be like $69. Nice.
And if people want to do that trip you were talking about in Jamaica, how do they do that? Because I think that sounds fun.
Oh my gosh, it is going to be absolutely epic. My boyfriend and I are actually teaching it together. So we've got a little bit of a cult following because I post like very salacious details of our sex life on Instagram. And so I know people are really excited to learn from both of us. And so it's through a resort called Coral Cove. They have not put up a sales page yet, but it will be coming soon. So in the meantime, if you want to just email me and be like, hey, I'm interested in the Jamaica trip, like let me know when it's available. That's totally fine. And my email is ashley@ashleymanta.com.
Yay. I had so much fun learning about you and your experience and cannabis and sex. You're fascinating. I love you. You're great.
And you're so well educated too. Like you have such a varied background that like you really know your shit.
Thank you. This was so much fun. I'm really glad we got to chat.
I know. Yes.
Thank you for joining us. If anybody wants to find her, please connect with her online. She has some great events coming up. And I guess until next time, Ashley, thank you.
Until next time. Bye. Thanks.
Bye.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
That was fascinating.
I know, wasn't it? I literally have been wanting to talk to that woman for 3 years.
$250 an hour is so worth it.
Yeah, I know. Every time she said something was expensive, I was like, how expensive is it? I want to know your prices. Like, tell me.
$250 an hour, totally worth it. She's totally worth it.
Absolutely. And I mean, especially, like the thing is, like, you spend so much time looking for a right partner, and sometimes you get a partner and you might not mesh sexually, but you mesh on every other thing. And finding someone who's at the top of their game who can be like, okay, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to figure it out. We're good. Like, sometimes you actually do need a coach in a relationship.
We've all experienced the people that you have great sex with, you don't necessarily have the great other parts of the relationship.
Right.
So it's like, to expect any one partner to be anything for you right off the bat, or to be everything for you right off the bat, is kind of unrealistic. And I think the concept of being able to coach yourselves into this new level of intimacy is really cool. And she was fascinating. I'm glad you found her. I'm glad you met her at MJ BizCon.
Yes. So thank you, MJM BizCon. So
yes. Speaking of another expensive lady, you found a really fascinating article this week about where sugar babies come from. So, Kat, do you want to tell people what sugar babies are real quick?
Yes. And I also want to say, first of all, the thing I find so funny about this is this came off an email I get for like people who want to work in the film industry. So this information did not come from like a sex site whatsoever. It was just like randomly in like an email, which is like, Hollywood's casting for this. They're looking for this kind of script. And who wants to know what a sugar baby is? Where it came from. So sugar babies are pretty much women who are usually younger than their men. Usually the women are the babies and the guys are the daddies. They're on standard seems to be about a 20-year difference between the two. And they're very pretty young things, and they get compensated in for some way for being in that relationship. Now, that relationship could be an actual marriage. It could be a boyfriend and girlfriend, or it could be an on the side thing. And, there's sites like SA.
Seeking arrangements.
Seeking arrangements, which everybody like in the sexy industry calls SA, which is you're looking for, it's sugar. It's like the sugar baby dating site. Where like, you could be like, oh, well, I would like you to, and you get to state whatever your terms are. So your terms could be, you want to get some clothes, some lingerie. It could be pay for a bill. It could be get paid for the date itself, but there's a large
allowance, like an actual monetary allowance.
Yeah. I mean, I have a friend who, in the world of, dancing in Las Vegas, all the really good girls get picked up by guys that then pay them an allowance per month so that they don't go dance or date anybody else. And usually it's about 10 grand. That seems to be the number that works per month. But like, it's a lot of different things. It could be like $500 to go on a date. So this woman, according to Gig's list, was considered the ultimate sugar baby. She was the
first sugar baby.
First sugar baby. And her name was Alma Spreckles. And she was the daughter of French and Danish aristocracy. And she always said she'd rather be an old man's darling than a young man's slave. So she would rather date an old man with money than be like the pretty girl that like had to be the slave and like clean and cook after the cute guy. So she understood her priorities.
And this was turn of the century, just to put it in context.
Absolutely. As we can see from the lovely hat, for those who are watching the video footage, there is a woman with a very large hat. But she, when she was like, I think like 13 or 14, she became the mistress of a retired miner. So like he's retired, right? So he's an older gentleman. And she wanted to marry him. And he was like, I don't want to marry you. So then she sued him for deflowerment.
Which I thought was amazing because she knew the value of that.
Yes. So she sued him for deflowerment. He paid her $1,200 at the turn of the century, which is about $30,000 today. So she was like, no, this is a very, very important thing. So like he had to pay up. And then she posed a lot as a model. And what happened was she was posing to be the goddess Nike, which is what the Nike brand is based on, is this goddess from Greek mythology. And the patron of the statue fell in love with her. So she was the model, which you can actually see is still on the top of one of the buildings in San Francisco. I can't remember.
Crazy.
Yes, because they were in San Francisco. And after 5 years of dating, he was 24 years her senior, and they ended up getting married in 1908. But she still had like lesbian affairs in France, and she was like the patron to the arts. So these are all of the buildings in San Francisco that they can directly correlate to the fact that she was like, I'm going to take your money. This is going to be an arranged marriage, and I'm going to spend it around. And she wanted to spend it on architecture. So the Palace of the Fine Arts, the Legion of Honor and Museum, and the San Francisco Maritime Museum were pretty much all funded by her husband's money.
Well, that's what's really, I mean, I think as you're reading the story, the thing is she is celebrated as one of the great donors of early century America.
Right.
And she was very aware that she had to marry a man that had enough money to let her do that. Sugar Baby, relating it back to that, her husband made his wealth as sugar plantations in Hawaii.
Right.
So that's how he became a billionaire. So that's technically kind of where the term comes from and why she's considered the first sugar baby.
Right, because they would spread the sugar all around, which is a very common like sugar baby term. Is
I have abundance. Why shouldn't I share it? Right?
Absolutely. You got to sprinkle it around. It's got to be on the top of the donut, so it's like all sparkly.
Yeah. So it's interesting, and I think the concept of sugar babying is it could be like negative or positive, however you think. But at the end of the day, these women know that they have an asset, and these men have an asset that these women want that they can't get without offering something else up other than their attention time. They have to add something else to the equation. And that's kind of where it comes into play. You know, the few times I've gone out with guys that kind of have this dynamic, I find it, and this is a generalization, but I find they kind of have a deep insecurity in some way, because the fact that they feel like this is the way to get their dream woman instead of becoming the man that their dream woman
wants them to be, which is different.
It's different. Yeah. But again, I don't necessarily think if you view marriage as a contractual relationship, it's not necessarily a bad decision to make.
So I went on a college reunion with my girlfriends in October, and I was talking to Ashley, I was saying, like, I went to an Irish Catholic college. So like I am the proverbial black sheep of the group, like with the stripper background, and everybody else is married with like 2 to 3 kids. Mm-hmm. And I was having a conversation with them about sugar babies, so to speak, like that, you know, girls finding guys at the club. And like, and my friend who is very wealthy and lives in New York said, oh, it's like a prenup contract for like an upper, East Side marriage, because like, it's kind of the same thing. It's like, you were the one who gave me the book that Whoopi Goldberg wrote about dating. And she talks about in that book, the women of the Upper East Side and the marriage is lasting the best because they had these like ridiculous prenups where they would get like super specific, where the guy would be like, I need you to be this way. I need you to have sex with me like 4 to 5 times a week, because it made it very clear what people wanted in terms of the relationship.
It clarifies expectations, and it also clarifies when you're not meeting them, so you don't get upset when you realize you're not upholding your end of the bargain, so they need to go elsewhere, I think is the other. There's a lot, having spent some time in New York in that society, there's a lot of turning heads the other way.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I was at a friend's house whose dad was just like insanely wealthy. I mean, they had a whole floor on the Upper West Side, like just insanely wealthy. And I remember we were hanging out with her mom in the living room, and her dad comes home and has two girls with him who are probably 25, beautiful, young. The mother just says hi, offers to get them a drink. Like they go off in the other room. And I remember just being like, that's their understanding. They have clearly just decided that's going to be okay because the lifestyle they provide for each other, they like, even if the sex isn't something that they're going to do anymore.
Right. It's like the concept of having an open relationship, but not from the standpoint of like, I want you to be an authentic person and I want myself to be an authentic person. It's like, hey, we're open because this is something you need and it will be provided by whatever you need because I want you to function as the breadwinner of the marriage.
I want to be able to do what I want to do when I want to do it, and living with you and being your wife allows me to do that, or being your sugar baby allows me to do that. And I think that we shouldn't criticize people for picking their partners based on that. For some reason, if you get married, it's considered less scandalous, but at the end of the day, like that's a big part of marriage is the money factor.
Yeah. And like also usually the people who end up doing this kind of stuff, they're very smart. You know, it's like to make that kind of like really good, like, you know, people who are like, okay, this is my choice. They don't care about the rules of society because they're above an IQ level where they're like, oh my God, what would people think? Because they've thrown that out the window and they're like, you know what? I'm going to be my own person. I'm going to be the person that I want to be. This is what I want out of life. And I want I want to find a person who's going to provide that for me, whatever those rules are. Like I was very much thinking about what our friend Honeybaked said in the interview we did with her, where she was talking about the value of dating very close to whatever number you are, because like everybody has a thing to offer and you got to figure out what that value is. And like, you know, for some guys, it's like, okay, I'm 20 years older than you, but I have the paycheck that gives me the value, you know?
Exactly. Speaking of finding a partner.
Yes.
We found a really fun dating show. Well, you found a really fun dating show. And somebody like, I actually found a trailer that I'm going to play for our audience here to give them an idea of kind of what this show is. Give me a second. I have to share it right. I think I didn't share the audio. Hold on.
And by the way, this was told to me by Vixen DeMille, who we'll be interviewing in a couple of weeks. Shout out to Vixen again, because she's British. And we were talking about crazy British TV show. And she's like, have you seen this show?
Okay, so without any more introduction.
In this dating show, we go back to basics.
Are you ready? Bring on.
And start where a good date often ends. Naked.
Well, if it frightens you, then go for it.
How do you feel about that penis?
I think it would definitely be a big one.
I think so.
I'm going to say goodbye to green.
Why?
It's the toe.
So I feel like that gave you kind of an idea, but it's not even as shocking as the actual show is.
The show, right? Like I was looking at the comments of the one I sent you, and somebody's like, how is this on YouTube? And I was actually thinking the same question.
Okay, so for those of you who are listening on the podcast and just heard the audio, basically what the show is it's a dating show where they gradually show you the naked body of your potential candidates, and you eliminate people as you go. And, they
have no names. They're only a color. They're coloring about. It's literally like window shopping where they barely talk. You're just looking at the bodies.
Correct. And you get to hear them talk right I think that's the last round. You get to hear them talk. Then they see you naked. You pick a date and you go on a date. Like that's the dating show. But the thing that blows my mind is that the very first thing they show you is the genitals. That's your very first.
Yeah,
and then they sit there and they critique these
They do.
genitals in detail.
As like Vixen said, she's like, this is a very British show where it's very like heady about them talking about the penises or the vaginas and getting like very technical, but it's all in like a prim kind of British way. And of course they had to have a female host because like a male host would be like too like sketchy.
Perfect.
So she's always like, she says it like matter of factly. She's like, oh, do you like a shaved vulva? Like, you know, what do you think about all the piercings? Like, and you're just like,
there was one where they were like talking about the penises and they were like, yes, you can tell that one they're circumcised because it's like part of its tanned. And I was like, what? Like,
oh my God, there's so many lines out of that one episode I sent you where I'm like, did they just say that? Like where the guy who there was like a gym rat guy and he's like, oh, he's like that vagina reminds me of like a vagina that was like a little moldy like brie. And like I was like, what? Like
yeah, no, I literally it's great. It's called Naked Attraction. You can actually watch full episodes on YouTube. Again, we don't know quite how because it's not just like a little bit of penis or vagina. It's a lot of penis, a lot of vagina, a lot of tits. They talk about nipples, sucking them, toes. Yes, you see their faces eventually, but it's not the focus.
Oh no, it's very like specific. Like the one girl who had like her clitoris pierced and then her vulva pierced, and it was like they were going like it's like so anatomical, and I think that's like it's so British anatomical. That like it's funny because when they go on because this whole show happens, you know, they eliminate people, they talk to people, and then the host, I mean not the host, the picker also has to be naked towards the end.
Yes.
And they do all permutations too. So they'll do lesbians, they'll do gay men, and then they'll do heterosexual couples. So that's like whatever. But then they go on a date, and they go on a date like that day. And it's from the two that I watched, it was like it's the most awkward. It's so awkward. It is so awkward. And like, it's just, and then they follow through like 6 weeks later, which is even better.
That's the best. Cause he blocked me. That was my favorite. The guy blocked the girl.
Oh my God, because she didn't want to go on another date. So then he was like, fuck it, but he blocked it knowing that he was going to have to go back on tape 6 weeks later because that's the format of the show.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
It was pretty good. I was very grateful for Vixen sending it over. And I think what it proves is that you should not pick your partner based on their genitalia.
No, because I think from what I saw in the two episodes, the two parts was that you typically pick the hottest person. Yes. But the hottest person is not compatible otherwise, because the one episode, the girl ended up connecting with another one of the guys. She was secretly dating him on the side.
Yeah, Yellow. She went out with Yellow.
Oh my God, the fact that they don't have names is like the craziest part. And then like they made like the girls work out with like the dumbbells, like because there's one part they do physical activity, but they don't really move that much. So they might like dance, and it'll be like a very, very slight dance, or then they'll do bicep curls, and they'll be like this, and it just looks like the naked background of a weird 1980s music video.
Yeah. So in short, we recommend it.
Yeah, great. And I actually think we should try and look at more like sexy TV shows from other countries, because I think this is like a gold mine that we can like delve into.
It's like our sexy women in history.
I know.
Well, that brings us to kind of one of the queens of sexy women in history that I thought we'd just get out of the way today.
Yes. Gypsy Rose Lee.
Yeah. So Gypsy Rose, I got to put on my glasses for this one because I got all kinds of them.
Are you going to start singing any of the songs?
No, I won't. I promise. But
no, you're welcome to.
So for Gypsy Rose Lee, long and short, she's probably considered the most famous burlesquer of early mid-century burlesque. And that's because there was a musical based on her memoirs that became very, very popular and starred, was it Natalie Rose? Is that who it was?
Natalie
Wood. Natalie Wood, that's her
Natalie
name.
Wood, and then who's it? Ethel Merm. Who's the mom? Who played the mom?
It's somebody like that, yeah. Some body broad.
And then in the next version, it was Bette Midler who played Mama Rose.
Yeah, and I've always really loved the story of Gypsy. It's a great musical. You get to see her life kind of on the vaudeville circuit, where her little sister was the star and she was the sidekick. And then kind of as vaudeville died, her family transitioned into burlesque because it really was the only viable art form for a female performer with her amount of kind of talent at that time. People joke and they call her like the most untalented stripper in a way, because it's not like she had a great gimmick. Her gimmick, though, was her mind.
Right.
Gypsy Rose Lee was also very funny. She was very witty. She was very good in the press, which made her an amazing crossover artist and allowed her to work on stages well through the Great Depression.
She was, when she was doing vaudeville with her sister, June, it was the June show. It was the Dainty Show, Hollywood Baby, and her Newsboys. And if I remember correctly, they made her play a boy a lot of times.
Yeah, they made her, she like would be a little boy in a little page outfit.
Right. And in the way that, like, you know, inside everybody is this inner diva. Like, I feel like she just was sitting there watching every show being like, I'll get my day, I'll get my day, I'll get my day. And then she did as a stripper. But her mind was like, she was known for not actually taking off a lot of clothes, but like sitting there and bantering while she was taking them off. And that was more of the show than anything else. But she was making like, you know, $700 to $2,000 a week, you know,
during the Great Depression.
Yeah.
Which I think is like, they explain it's like $10,000 these days or whatever. And you're like, that is an insane amount of money considering the rest of the country was starving, not working, had no money. She was doing multiple shows a day. And it was a hard life. You know, they definitely, as a performer in that time, you did multiple shows a day. You stood outside the theater in between the shows. But she kind of says, she's like, hey, for that amount of money, I'll stand outside.
Right.
Like,
and she also, along with writing her memoir, which turned into the Broadway play, she also wrote murder mysteries, which I have actually read one of them.
the G-string murders.
The G-string murders, correct. Yes. And, you know, they're like classic Dashiell Hammett kind of stories from the 40s and 50s. But like, they're fun little glimpses into the world of what burlesque was during that time period, because they go into like the details of like being in the dressing room and how tiny the dressing room is. And like, you know, there's
Nothing's changed.
Nothing has changed. No, it's all the same stuff, you know?
It's just such, she's such an amazing woman, because she took, being a stripper back then was kind of like a scarlet letter in a lot of ways. You generally didn't have a lot of opportunity to cross over into other realms, but she amazingly turned that opportunity into not only a thriving burlesque career, but a writing career, a career as a TV personality. She was involved in multiple films, and as a female, she was self-made.
Yeah. Yeah. As a lot of entrepreneurial women are when you start getting into the sex industries, as a stripper, as a cam girl, as like a porn star, like they're very self-starter kind of industries once you get over the fact that you're doing something that's not normative to society.
Yeah. So we highly recommend checking out Gypsy Rose Lee. She's a really cool, badass woman in history. Yeah. If you find her on the musical, check it out. It's so much fun. It's one of those roles that I always say I want to do before I get too old to do it. So if any producers out there are looking to revive Gypsy, I got you.
You got it, Julia.
I got it. I'll even take my top off. I'll do the burlesque part. Right.
Oh my God. Yes, of course.
Shocking. But yeah, that's really all I have for this week's episode of Better Than Sex. You know, we're going to be putting out some more videos with pinups on tour soon, so we'll announce that. We have more.
Yeah, you got a lot of views on your video since Thursday.
Yeah, that video went really well. The one that we filmed in front of the Las Vegas sign. I've been getting all kinds of text messages. I even got a text message from my dad who doesn't have Facebook saying that he saw it and he really liked it. So
yeah,
I don't know how he found out about it, but I'm glad he did. And it's just nice to show off the talent that we have. We're starting to get bookings again. We got 2 bookings this week.
Very exciting.
Things are picking back up, and it is nice to have life again. And we're going to be back on Thursday with another podcast.
We are going to be back for, I think, 2 through the end of this month and the first 2 weeks of July. So
yay!
We have a lot of really fun guests coming up.
Yeah, so to learn more about our really cool friends and the sexy industries that they're in and all of the amazing ways that if you want to get involved in the sex industry, you can, which is so much more broad than people. We all grew up thinking like sex industry was prostitution, but that's not it. It's so broad and it's so fascinating talking to all these people. If you want to see videos of some really cool performers, you can always check that out on our website at WTTburlesque.com. Find us on all the socials at WTTBurley. Rate and review us if you like us on iTunes. We always appreciate that. It's fun seeing your guys' comments and what you're enjoying in the show. And we look forward to bringing more people that interest you on.
Yes, absolutely.
So I think that's it. I guess we'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.